everyone, workshop and all the other things that are happening this week. As Jay was saying, I'm actually going to my talk is going to relate to what's happening on Friday, but I'll say that also. Um, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
So on the event on Friday, which is a DCanon event, is related to A Mouth Holds Many Things, the hybrid literary anthology that I'm a co-editor of with Jyoti Nadarajan. And we've been working on this project for the past 3 years. It's a DCanon project, and it's published in partnership with Phonograph Editions. And in short, it's a collection of hybrid literary works by 36 women and non-binary BIPOC writers, artists, and there is an exhibition at Stello across the street with 12 of the artists
Okay.
from the collection, and we are going to be celebrating the book launch event on Friday night, and it's Stephanie Adams Santos, who's maybe in it also you'll see in workshop, is one of the contributors to the collection. So looking forward to that, and thank you to PNCA for helping us celebrate that. Let's see, I'm trying to see that's yeah. I'm like, oh, I see, here's the room. I'm sorry, I'm like trying to make my way around Zoom. So transparent, I'm all for transparency, all for the seams showing. And so for my talk, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to read the foreword from A Mouth Holds Many Things, which relates to just pondering themes of hybridity and form, which working in between form, which is something I do. And I'm going to show some media while I give this lecture, and there'll be some pauses for some exercises as well. And which means I'm gonna go, my face is gonna go off screen, and I'm gonna just be showing my slideshow. And yeah, just invite you to come into this space, and hopefully there'll be some space to engage different senses in this as we're thinking. So I'll just start. Let me see. Share screen. Okay. And if we have issues with the sound, when we get to that part, I guess we'll see what happens. So this is called "And May I Claim Ocean as My Literary Form, Sea is My Preferred Genre." And please just speak up if something happens, like I cut out, because I can't see what's happening in the room or in the chat.
If there's audio, it's not coming through.
There's no sound on this one, so I'm going to talk over this, and you're going to see this image for a while. So just let me know if you can hear my voice. I'm walking along a shoreline. A shoreline is a place, a geography, where two elements, water and sand, meet. We call this place of meeting a line, but it is also the continual erasing of line. How water writes, erases, rewrites its own delineation of the encounter. The shape of how these two realms meet, a constant inconstant. fluctuation of, demarcation? Is it water's tendency toward a constant inconstancy that insists on this snaking of lineage, this lineal snaking? Is it water, the agent of erasure, even self-erasure? Or is it the sand's nature of both yield and subsume that resists the holding of line, resists inheritance of the notion that line makes record? Surely we know sand is an unreliable canvas, is ambiguity of canvas, a mutable, shifting substance of page that does not wish to be page. Together, sand and water conspire, repeatedly evolving and eroding the writing of their own betweens, which is to say, what is a boundary but a temporality of attempt at holding anything? All writing begins as boundary. I am walking along a shoreline, line that refuses linear nature. I begin here with this image and attempt to send text across the page evocative of the shape of water, because this is how the hybrid journey begins for me. A realization of the transmutability, the very tenuousness of boundaries that separate, that supposedly demarcate realms otherwise as distinct as ocean and land. My own arrival into the realm of hybrid writing was, like this tracing of a shoreline, not a direct, not a fixed or predictable path. Here are the facts. I had written and published 2 books of fiction, the genre that had thus far identified me as a literary author. I had, since my early 20s, also been writing on the side. Is there?
No, it's okay. I unmuted it. It's good.
I had an undergraduate background, a naive once ambition in filmmaking. I was trying to write what I believed might be another novel, a long-form book, but images wanted to invade, and a straightforward through line, characters with character arcs, plot, all those conventional narrative devices continued to evade me. Instead, interiority and some esoteric, intuitive rhythm wanted to lead, and inner music vying to come through. I was aware of an elliptical nature, an unwieldy energy at the subtle beating heart or twisted gut of the story I was seeking to tell that kept balking, digressing askew of the more normative, straight paved roads expected of a novel or memoir. The story I was seeking to tell had to do with Vietnam, with my own mixed cultural family and parental legacies, with the usual diaspora and refugee lineages of war and exodus and inherited traumas. But for whatever reason, I could not wrangle those lines, in my case, thorny vines, into a shape that was illegible or traditional enough format to be sellable. Not to belabor the point, but if you would just write in a more traditional format, my New York literary agent had once said to me. But it was not that I was not trying. It was not even that I was trying intentionally to be difficult or experimental. It was just that, as a writer, I am limited. I could not lie. I could not pretend. I could not but follow the impulse of the art through which, in truth, I was wrestling with ghosts. And ghosts do not respect walls, nor the notion of voicing through a single or same body consistently. And so something in the work kept twisting, defying shape, container, resolution, or closure. The book that wanted to be needed to twist even further afield, needed to buck the leather constraints of book itself. I garnered rejections for this manuscript I was trying to write, I was gently released from my obligation to my literary agent, also rejected by other agents and publishers. I found myself wandering a hinterland I had no map for, personally, creatively, professionally. In truth, this was a very lonely period. At the time, I knew no other writers who were trying to work across disciplines. I had no mentors, no community, no assurances that any of it was a very good idea. No doubt there existed examples of multidisciplinary artists and experimental writers, but I hadn't yet encountered them along the path I'd thus far taken. I kept working through the isolation and self-doubt, the discovery and alchemy of those 7+ years it took to forge my way through that first hybrid project, which I eventually arrived at describing as a memoir in image plus text plus music. I found a small press publisher, lost them too, the press folded. I made some new friends with whom I formed a loose publishing collective. I did all of my own editing, layout, design, learned the production line, and essentially published my first hybrid project on my own. If I had not taken it into my own hands as such, I'm certain it would never have been permitted to enter the world in the forms it inhabits. And what is writing? It begins with cutting, etymologically, a verb describing an action. To tear, scratch, carve, line, immaterial motion, impressed into or upon something material, stone, clay, leaf, pulp, fibers. This tradition of the human and mark making. Why must we write? The implement, the stick, the chisel, the discovery of puncture as tool to claim a record. To arm the self or the tribe against forgetting, perhaps, to endeavor to step outside of, outlast time. Contained within this tear, however, always to an impulse toward ownership, to draw boundary between or around, whether an object, geography, observation, memories, or the ineffability of experience. There is something we wish to keep, something we desire to belong to, that we nonetheless know we are destined, doomed to lose. From its inception, writing was always a preparation for loss. And I'm talking about writing, but I'm also talking about hybridity as a kind of writing born out of such losses and knowledge of losses. A writing assembling itself amid, despite the vacuum of interstices, ambiguity of middle grounds, tangle of intersections. A writing of refusals to write, immutability of voice, ebbs and flows, and many repeated obliterations. A writing that construes itself of edges, polylocalities of entry and egress, assemblages of disassembly, multiplicities, duplicities, many cities. Let's return to water. I've always had a thing for rivers. I grew up along rivers that flow through the Sierra Nevadas of Northern California, where back in the 1850s, men who had come to mine gold from those rivers dug so much they changed the course of those waterways. Rivers disrupted, reformed. And in the land where I was born, on the other side of the globe, from where had traveled with me those boundary-refusing ghosts, the patterns of rivers there too were heavily influential. Seasonal floods and deltas had cultivated the people who had learned to live in rhythm with the riverine vicissitudes of water, a myth that the first mother of our country's people wept the rivers into being, and those rivers then had wed her and thus us to the sea. A river sends tributaries, many mouths, to the sea. And as this book knows, in mouth holds many things. Which is to say, the theme of multiplicity is also the story of erosion, evasions, evolutions, destabilizations, dispersals, decenterings, diasporas, the ground troubled, rewritten. A river breaks from its main vein because water possesses the ability to circumvent obstacles through fragmenting, simultaneously multiplying and dividing itself, in order yet to keep to its initial course, which was always simply to follow gravity and rejoin the sea, that primeval one body made of and fed by all the mouths and streams. I see multimodal writing employing a similar tactic of breaking apart to bring together. We are divergent and we are confluent. Most of us arrive here on our own, singly and singularly. We arrive, each of us, to our particular patch of wet, shifting sand, of our own peculiar accord, or chords, let's say, idiosyncratically learned, then voiced. Because the path of learning, of discovering the hybrid realm was not, for me, one guided by mentors and models, especially initially. I followed no one exactly, no one led or invited me, as is often wanted on the topic of lineage. I could cite the seminal works and names that have held space in this realm, Cha, Adnan, Vicuña, Rankin, etc. But in truth, those writers' works did not come into my knowing until after I had made most of my journey through my first hybrid project, somewhat blindly, fumblingly, feeling as if I were navigating through a hinterland without a map. Yes, they were waiting for me eventually when I was ready to find them, and so honored to find them, and began then to also discover my contemporaries working in kindred liminal spaces. In actuality, I learned from other so-called aspirants, other current hybrid authors publishing via small presses, lesser known. At the same time, I was discovering the works of what we might call the masters or mistresses or other non-gender conforming label in the field, an albeit relatively short lineage of hybrid experimental works by women of color working predominantly in English. I feel it important to observe that an initiatory part of this journey, one's commitment to it, may require, or at least it did for me, a dive into the unknown and willingness to abandon reliance on canonical thinking, canonical measures and validations and examples as guideposts. At some point, the markers stop. You venture into the open grasses of an open field, alone. And for many of us, this learning, this tracing of invisible trails through overgrown grass, does not occur inside classrooms or existing structures. It arrives rather like a call on the wind. We don't know where it is coming and calling from, that we hear or feel from our seat at a desk in a room, perhaps. And it requires us to turn our attention out the windows, something beyond the glass beckons. A new fracturing of the light, a refracted, strange sort of voce sound, new registers of echoes. We are divergent and we are confluent. We are collective without being majority. We are multiple without being conglomerate. We are scattered through, across. We are amongst. And what kind of writing is it that seeks to destroy itself even as it builds itself? And why this performance, undergrass tactic of divergence, diversions, this method of the many faces? And what if I describe the mechanical arms of writing as a technology sutured to our natural limbs but that we were not born with. And so we learned how to operate them, navigate their inherited dysfunctions, channeled via our true off-center mouths. And what if I claim ocean as my literary form, sea as my preferred genre, if I must name one? May I cite water as my container, conveyor of choice, through which I may allow the unmediated flows of that immaterial substance we call voice. To comprehend that one thing can be multiple things at once and still be wholly that one thing, and that multiple things separate can simultaneously be with the same thing. To understand there is no direct line for arriving at simultaneity or multivalence. To understand hybridity as a way of saying we are neither this nor completely that. At the same time, we are this and we are that. Maybe even that other that too. And it's all subject to change. We might dissolve or evolve any boundaries. And we won't stay put where you think you've safely placed us, named us, tried to corral us. There is necessarily no formula to repeat us, our arrivals or our formations. Such positions and territories are not always supported, condoned, understood, or even accurately perceived by either the here's or there's one may have strayed from. Hybridity as a challenge to the dominion of identities. Hybridity as a state of slippage, unwilling to capitulate, an accepted tenuousness of being. So I'm going to move into our first exercise here, and I want to just give people a few minutes to consider these questions. What is a line? And you can consider this in terms of how to define it for your own artistic lexicon, or how do you utilize line as a literary device or tool? What is lineage for you as a writer, artist? And I'm going to play some sounds of an ocean since this is part of our theme. And this is a clip that I took on the Oregon coast on a beach that had a lot of pebbles. So there is something about the way the water and the rocks are interacting in the sound that hopefully you'll hear. So this will play for about 4 minutes, and we'll just right to the first exercise during this time. So please hold on to that exercise and we're going to continue. I'll share a few more words and media here. Can you hear me all right? Okay. So I wanted to talk about the essay that I just wrote, which you didn't actually see, but the text shape that I was using for the poetic portions of this essay came to me initially in a dream, and I'll show some examples of that text shape. Not with those words specifically, but in the dream understanding conveyed to me through the dream, I understood that the words lapping the edges of the page were meant to mimic the shape of a shoreline, of water lapping at a shore. The way that the edges of ocean tenuously shape and then reshape themselves as they make contact with land, the understanding in the dream being of a continuous text column that would emulate that shape, that movement of ebb and flow. But I actually envisioned it first in the inverse, with the words appearing to tumble inward from the outer edges of the page. And in my efforts to honor this text shape that had come to me in a dream, I've been pouring different sets of words into the containers and have been asking myself to listen. And these are just some examples. You don't need to actually see the words, just using the general shape of the text. These are some of the word waves I've been working with. I'm still trying to hear what it is I'm listening to. In this formulation, I still don't know whether the blank space or the textual space is meant to signify land or water. Some questions I find myself still wondering. Do the words shape the form like a body pushing from the inside outward? Or should the form shape the words? Which conforms to the other or informs the other? Or is this a necessary negotiation at all between the immaterial that seeks to voice or be voiced and the material that must hold it, convey it? And then there are times when, in working with it, I have found that text wants to break line entirely. Text does not want to stay in line, wants to disrupt or obscure or upend, wants to eradicate, scramble, disassemble, twist, invert, reassemble, or disavow line entirely. Again, what is a line? What does a line delineate? What is lineage? Why again do we write? If writing is formation, is the forming of form, what animates this formula for you? Sometimes too, I have experienced that the words do not wish to stay just on the page, on paper, or that the page is not enough. The material wants more dimension, maybe a body, maybe a cavity to sound within. It wants yet another conduit. To illustrate what I mean, I'm going to show a text animation of some of these same words and line fragments you've just seen now. These are fragments that appear in my book Instrument, and also as audio on the accompanying album, Traveler's Ode. These are words that for me have refused to stay inside one container alone. Words spilling out of the seams of writing that I had tried to contain them within. To give some more context, these particular words began as songs, then they migrated to paper, then they migrated back into body, into voice, then into a digital audio workstation, where they were processed again alongside other sounds, and then asked to be animated on my computer screen. The video I'll show is about 9 minutes long, and while I show this video, I'll offer another exercise, another invitation to write along to it, to consider the questions that we were thinking about earlier with line, but then to add this thought, what in your own writing cannot be held within the lines? And when the line breaks, what comes through? Before I show the video, I'll just give a little context warning. The first minute you'll just hear audio, no text, you'll just see a black screen. And also some of the audio in the piece involves like vocal repetition and fragmentation and some glitchiness, distortions that might not be pleasing to all ears. So if you find that's the case, and you're on Zoom, you can turn the volume down. You can just write to the picture, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes and close with maybe some discussion. And I actually have a collective document that I thought we could try doing a collective poem to close out. So just thinking about that, and just let me know, Jay, if the volume does anything wonky as I start this.
I will, Del. Thanks.
So much that we forget. I forget that in another time we knew each other importantly. I forget the day dawned without time, without thought, and I stood watching the sun, reading the sky. I forget there were breachers and watchers and seers. I forget there were hunters and helpers. I forget there were rivers that were our friends and our meeting places. I forget there were markers once to tell us how far we'd come, and then somewhere along the way they just stopped, meaning we'd gone further than any of us had ever gone before. I forget there were markers once to tell us how far we'd come, and then somewhere along the way they just stopped, meaning we'd gone further than any of us had ever gone before.
Và như là bước vào thất bại trên đường
Mình sẽ luôn là người nọ đến từ nơi nọ. Đấy là một dòng nối nước. Biển cả, biển cả. Nhưng nước nào rồi cũng ngược dòng, mang dáng hình nước mắt. Mưa, đây là vết sách, từ đó ta rời khỏi. Tất cả những ký ức tôi có thể thuộc về, đã chẳng thuộc về tôi. So much that we forget. I forget that in another time we knew each other importantly. I forget the day dawned without time, without thought. And I stood watching the sailors floating in the sky. I forget there were beaches.
Okay. Thank you all for letting me bring those voices and sounds into the space, whether in the room or in the Zoom space. So I thought we could close with just each of us placing a line on this collective document. I just put it in the chat, and then I think Jay may have also emailed it to folks. Yeah, just to see how we might experiment with a collective voicing ourselves, and place a line or fragment or a few words. Doesn't even have to make sense. It doesn't have to be a cohesive thought, onto this document, and place the lines just in order. I guess we don't have to do it necessarily in order if people want to like insert lines in between each other's. But yes, please go ahead and share. So meditating on concepts of line or lineage or how we break the lines. And I started with a line fragment up there myself.
Sending it right now.
Great. I see some movement in the dock, which is
I just emailed it around to everybody's Willamette account. And faculty, I think. Oh, let me email it.
and I'll stop the screen share at this point. I love seeing this movement in the dock. Like there's all these like little anonymous animals inputting data. Shall we do this for another minute and then take the last 5 minutes to just chat? How about let's finish up whatever line you're putting on there. I love the slashes. So nice. Go ahead and finish. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that. I think we could open up for discussion if anyone has any questions. Would anyone like to read our poem?
I'll read it.
I could do it.
We gotta,
Good too.
We can do a collective reading of it.
oh, maybe Acela, let's let, Acela, do you want to do it?
Yeah, where do you want me to start and end?
How about we could sort of use the breaks that occur on the page as stopping points, and someone else can step in.
It's good.
Yes.
Collective oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Collective shoreline poem. When the line breaks, emotions, sensory feelings creep in, noticing similarities, past and present. It's meant to be broken. We are missed at the end. I let the words bounce off the walls or fly across the room, my mind, page. Once these words calm down, I invite them back. I invite them back to breathe again. To breathe again. Still finding them structured. Searching for structure as a form of fear? Maybe. But some days, I let the words bounce around and scatter. When they calm down, that's when they fall through the line breaks. Land on the familiar line, or go from the cuffs and travel around on the page.
Someone else want to read the next?
I can.
Meaning between
bet-
disparate parts. Okay. Meaning between disparate parts, a purpose emerging from nothing, past, presented, future. Here is just the spine of blood's animal. The line meets its secret face. In a mirror of silence, I want to be held, layering. To leave the lines as frazzled as Einstein's hair and my own body spent and burned through. On a remote isle, a line breaks and a pack of wolves forgets its own history. Where they once hunted rams which scaled steep terrain, a trap and wound has relegated them to rabbit on the plains. A lineage is a fickle thing. The light dappled watery ghosts invite me in for a pleasant swim, and, still laughing, pull me under. In my efforts to fill the space so I cannot be seen, I am still visible in spite of myself.
Lovely.
Her laugh, her smile, years twisting, expanding, birthing into forever. But what does it need? Does it want to break? Does it want to stay whole? Everything precedes the line, a softened indentation of pines and maples, not a footprint, a thread untethering, unfurling, unraveling, a declaration, a complaint, a question, a single string of noise, an infinite web, nothing and everything.
The paper is burned through now. My eyes peer through the holes, watching the holy candles flickering in the distance, the echoes of colors that dance in between eyelids, phantom others, circle of fifths, rotating figure, birds in arpeggio.
Arrival before the next arrival, desire down the star cannot be held within the lines, the form of constellation, desire down the star cannot be held, cannot be comforted by the walls of, they want me to build a dam only to burst through it. My broken lines are open, sensitive. When the line breaks, I watch the dock recede, floating anchorless as a buoy untethered, bobbing atop the peaks of the ocean surface as it licks and curls and pulls. Everything is out there. Everything is in here. I am the line between the was there and the not there yet.
Spirit is in the mangle, text always gorgeous in the ruin of blur, of fragment, distortion, disassembly, splatter, erosion, wonder. Her voice is a lullaby, she who says the ocean is my literary form, to learn to write on the lines of music, only to electrocute those lines.
Continuous, never endless, less end, continue us, never end, less contend, you us. The fragments of the broken line, who picks them up and who builds with them, who carries them back to make a fire, to cook food over, to share stories. What grows from those fragments of broken lines? What stories do they nourish?
Wow. Thank you all so much. That's really beautiful. Jay, we're at 10 o'clock. Do we
Oh, we
want?
have to go. Let, let's give Dow Strom a round of applause.
That was beautiful, Dow. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for your participation. I think that this, I love this poem. This is wonderful.
All right, y'all, we have.
Okay, thanks everyone. And we'll see.
Yeah, thank you so much,
11.
Dow. We have 58 minutes. Angie is going to take their fellow cohort to M29 briefly to show them where it is before you all take. And then Pupe, do you know where it is?
No.
Okay, you can go too.
I just came here always in this street.